Joining us, a guy that has been all over this story from beginning and still unraveling, Jeff Carlisle of ESPN. Jeff, welcome to Red Card. Really appreciate you joining us. I'm sure it's a hectic day. Thanks so much. Where do we go from here now? Next, Jeff.
Well, thanks for having me on, first of all. In terms of where we go from here, I mean, this is the beginning. This isn't the end. I think Blatter's resignation is something that so many of us associated with the game have been hoping for so long. But really, it's about instituting some of the reforms that Blatter and Domenico Scala talked about today. And the irony is that so many of these reforms were proposed by the Independent Governance Committee, back in 2013. And so I think that's why, certainly, I think there's happiness in today's development, but I think there's some skepticism and some wariness as well, because FIFA has talked a good game about reform before. They resisted to the last. And, the only, I think, recommendation that they approved from the IGC was to have independent or separate, adjudicatory and ethics chambers, to try to deal with some of the corruption issues that were coming up with things like term limits, background checks on proposed Exco members, all of that was shot down. So, FIFA has told us that they're going to try to institute some of those reforms, but it's time that they showed us and actually followed through. So, again, this is the beginning, but not by any means the end.
What was the curveball that changed it all from Friday to today? I believe, this is my own theory, Jeff, I'd love to hear from you. I have a feeling that some of the things that Chuck Blazer spoke to the FBI and the authorities about have Sepp's name in there, and someone alerted to Sepp to say, hey, you better step down because lots is coming down and you're part of it. What's your theory on it?
Well, my theory on it is that the letter that was addressed to Jerome Powell from the South Africa Organizing Committee, talking about the $10 million and directing that $10 million be sent to Jack Warner. I mean, I think that before Blatter could always just claim plausible deniability, point to people that were kind of outside of FIFA's inner circle, and just saying that these guys are bad actors and nothing more. I mean, now you're talking about people getting implicated who are very, very close to Blatter. And so I think that proximity, probably made Blatter think that he was next. It's been reported that he's a target of the FBI. And I think as a consequence, he realized that he really didn't have any future and that he needed to step down.
Jeff, we heard from some of the sponsors today, McDonald's, Adidas, I forget the third one that spoke out, but they are really happy the way things are going now in a new direction for the game we love. They're satisfied that things need to get better, will get better. Your thoughts on these sponsors now speaking out?
Well, I think that's pretty convenient for them to speak out now. I mean, really, now, and who knows what was being done in back channels? Who knows what was happening behind the scenes, what kind of communications were being made, whether they threatened to pull their money out. That hasn't been reported. And so I think it's a little premature to simply declare victory and that everything is going to be rosy now that Blatter is gone. Again, so much needs to be done, not only at the FIFA level, but at the Confederation level. I mean, obviously, CONCACAF is just in a terrible mess at the moment. Again, the Justice Department laid out multiple generations of executives caught in engaging in corrupt activity. So, it's a fantastic first step. One that a lot of people look forward to. Again, you can issue press releases, you can say that you're going to do all these things. I mean, the thing that troubles me is that the constituency that elected Blatter is still in place, as is the cronyism and the entrenched interest. And so I think that's going to, overcoming that is going to take some doing. So, obviously it's a great look for the sponsors because the man most associated with the corruption is now exited stage left or whatever it was today. But there's a lot more work that needs to be done.
Let's talk about the two World Cups coming up, Jeff. The one in Russia in 2018 and then in 2022 in Qatar.
let's be honest out there to the public. You and I both know right now Russia, there's no way that they're going to take that away from them. Stadiums are almost being finished and in the process of being built still. To me, I think it's going to be really interesting now to look at Qatar. Many precious lives have been lost in this stifling heat to build these stadiums. Do you believe that this World Cup from Qatar could be taken away? That's one. And the other part is this. What if the Qatari officials come out and say, hey, you know what? Our palms, we had to grease the palms of some of these executives for us to get this World Cup. We're all upfront about this. We don't want to lose this. Let's go to court over it. Your thoughts?
Well, there's always a possibility that Qatar could lose it, but I've always, the scenarios that have been explained to me have always been incredibly remote. Obviously, if there's a war in the Middle East, that would be a reason for them to lose it. If there was a health crisis of some sort, like we saw with SARS in China, many years ago, that's another reason why it could be taken away. But, I mean, Qatar is building these stadiums as well as we speak. I mean, obviously, workers are working in just ridiculous and inhumane conditions and perishing as a result, and that really has not forced any change. So, yes, it's a possibility that the World Cup could be taken away from Qatar, but I still think it's a long shot. I think a lot depends on the investigation of the Swiss authorities, in terms of vote rigging with relation to 2018 and 2022. I mean, I think whether the World Cup gets moved, I think is dependent on the outcome of that investigation.
Let's talk about, Jeff, how the election took place on Friday. Sepp Blatter won, almost in a landslide in many ways, and, his opponent backed away from a second ballot. And I don't think people understand how this all goes down. You could better explain it than me, but Sepp Blatter has the support of these smaller nations that basically have the same and equal voice as a Germany, as in Italy, smaller countries in Africa, Central America, on and on. I mean, to me, I think Europe, South America, CONCACAF really have to step up to the plate now and play a big part and tell these smaller countries, yes, we want you part of the game, but your voice and your vote isn't as strong as ours. Your thoughts?
I think that's going to be incredibly difficult. For years, prior to João Havelange, taking over, FIFA was an organization for the big countries, for the traditional soccer nations, and they really, especially Africa, really, didn't do much to include, the developing soccer nations, if you were, and part of the reason why Blatter was so effective is because, he built upon some of the approaches that Havelange took and looked to include and give money to a lot of those developing soccer nations. So there's been talk of, UEFA kind of taking its ball and going home and this and that. I think that would be counterproductive. I think you've got to try to change the organization from within. That's not easy. Certainly there's some cultural differences as it relates to whether bribery and kickbacks are legitimate ways of doing business. But again, I think it's a combination of the authorities, I think sponsors, and and the rest of all the countries that are members of FIFA kind of working together to think, hey, how can we change things? I think there's some momentum now, and we'll see how effective those reform efforts are. But in terms of a breakaway type World Cup, again, I just don't think that would achieve the end. I mean, don't forget there've been corruption problems in Europe as well. I mean, it's certainly maybe not so much at the high administrative levels, but I mean there obviously instances of match fixing and influence of referees and things like that. So I don't look at a UEFA breakaway as the cure-all that some people think.
Jeff, as we close it out, to me, I've got a lot of time for Sunil Gulati, Victor Montagliani. I think these are two of the sharpest guys in the soccer world right now. They're honest, they're down to earth, they care about the game, they care about the future of the game in their countries, but worldwide as well. And my stomach churns when a lot of people worldwide say, well, here we go, the world's police, the USA behind it. I think this time around, being the world's police, well done, US of A. Because I got to tell you, hearing the story of Chuck Blazer renting an apartment in New York for $6,000 a month to house his cats, my stomach turns, Jeff, because I'm a parent of 2 boys. And my kids can afford to play the game that I love for years and years. But all over the world, you and I both know, Jeff, kids can't afford shoes, a ball, shin pads, tees, on and on. And this guy, this buffoon, $6,000 to house cats, it's unbelievable, Jeff.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really disgraceful, not only at the conduct, but I mean, the thing that just really kills me is, Jeffrey Webb, he was brought in as a reformer. He was brought in as a guy to clean up the mess, and everyone that you talk to in the USSF and the MLS and elsewhere said, he's doing a great job. We've got the governance of CONCACAF is so much better now. And in fact, he was basically just taking over the schemes that have become institutionalized. And so, as bad as Blazer is, I mean, it's just the perpetual nature, of these activities and this behavior. I mean, that's what troubles me the most, because, how do you get rid of it? How do you root these people out? What safeguards can you put in place? And I think that's the real challenge for guys like, Sunil Gulati, going forward. And, also, how do you get credibility back in that organization? I mean, it's going to be very difficult.
You're bang on. Very quickly before we let you go, Jeff, just on a different page, TFC, without Michael Bradley being called up for Team USA's friendlies under Jurgen Klinsmann. I got a big beef with this. Many TFC fans have a big beef with this. I wouldn't be surprised if the coaching staff of TFC and Tim Bazbachenko have a problem with this. And here's my problem, Jeff, is look, we know what Michael Bradley's all about. To me, he's a leader. On and off the field, he is a machine. We know what you're going to get from Michael Bradley. Why call him up for these friendlies when the Italian stallion, Giovinco, and him are on the same page? Finally, TFC are on a roll to get into the playoffs. They've got a synergy together, and Jurgen decides, well, let me call up Michael because I need him for these friendlies. It's not even a Gold Cup or World Cup qualifier. Why do it?
Well, I mean, this is, I guess in a twisted way, I think, look on the bright side. I mean, the fact that the TFC players are getting called up, I mean, that shows that, they're, as a club, Toronto is starting to really reach into the upper echelons of MLS. I mean, this is something that clubs across the league have to deal with, and it's getting worse because there are all kinds of competitions that are calling players away. I mean, you think about the U23s and the U20s, and the U23s might not seem like that big a deal, but I can tell you that the San Jose Earthquakes miss Fatai Alash. I mean, they would love to have him back in the field, and they're losing him. And then you've got all the CONCACAF countries that are going to call players away for friendlies in the World Cup. So it's unfortunate. Obviously, I'd like to see MLS observe FIFA fixture dates more consistently, but there are a lot of moving parts to that, and it's an unfortunate situation. But I think the good news for Toronto is that defensively things are improving quite a bit for them, and that leaves them in a situation where I think they're better able to handle the departure of a Michael Bradley than, say, they were a year ago.
Jeff, you're a class act. You're a true gentleman. We really appreciate you coming on short notice. You're a busy guy. We thank you so much. God bless. Have a great rest of the week, and we thank you again for joining us to talk about Sepp Blatter resigning. Thanks again, Jeff.
Anytime, Anthony. Take care now.
Jeff Carlisle of ESPN, he is a busy guy, but the best in the business. Love this guy. He's down to earth, he's honest, he's pure, and he knows his stuff. Jeff Carlisle of ESPN. Follow him on Twitter. Follow this guy. He knows his stuff. He's been all over this story from beginning to end. I got to tell you,